council. If I can address
Sure,
one of
go
John's
ahead.
questions as well. The farmers market is a city-sponsored event, which is why the city is the applicant. The city's the one who says it's going to be closed for this period for the farmers market. Just as for so many years, council said this Jackson Street parking lot is going to be closed for 26, 28 weeks for the farmers market. So it was all intended that it's a city activity, and the right-of-way being regulated by the city had the right to do that.
Oh, I'm not questioning the city's right and ability to do it. I'm questioning whether, we should essentially say for half the year, don't worry about having a parade because you're not going to get a permit. I have a problem with that. And then I also have a problem with saying that the rest of you folks that apply for a permit better not be trying to do anything where you're going to make any money except for you people that are part of the farmer's market. You can make money. I have a little problem with that, too.
You want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, I mean, it says right in the resolution that you're trying to balance the community aspects, the private uses of the right-of-way against the reason that the city has right-of-way, and that is to move people. It's a multimodal transportation corridor. So sidewalks, streets, alleys, those are all rights-of-way. They are not owned by the city. They are merely in the trust of the city, and the city regulates their use. So we can't sell public right-of-way. As you know, you can vacate it and give it back to from whence it came, but you can't sell it. So it's not exactly owned by the city. There are going to be some, if we want to make this balance, and I remember about 10 years ago, we had a rash of block parties. People wanted to have block parties, and then it was, okay, how do we do that in a safe way? Somebody's driving home at dusk, they turn on the street. If the traffic controls aren't right there, somebody could barrel into people in the middle of the street. So we had some issues with that. Downtown, the issues that we had mostly with farmers market, and we've had some parties downtown, call them block parties or whatever, but a band playing downtown, and you have people extending their sidewalk cafes, you have people who have their wares out on the street, those sorts of things. Is that going to be allowed? And last year the council addressed the block party situation by saying we're going to extend the sidewalk cafes. In this situation, and Rod's going to talk about a proposal in the next item on your agenda, is is the council willing by resolution to allow alcohol, beer and wine, to be consumed on the public right-of-way in the central business district? Well, if you can't close down the public right-of-way for private use, then how is that going to be allowed at all? And the reason is because if it's closed for another reason, such as a block party, not the block party, but as a band's downtown, that an owner of a restaurant or a bar could petition the city to have an area that would be permitted for that use by resolution of the council, because the right-of-way is already closed at that time. It wouldn't be closed for their use. It's closed for the bigger event. So I understand your situation. It's just going to take a while for us to get this so it works smoothly.
I'm going to talk to Dan first, and I'll come back to you, Rod, in a second.
John, I think of it like, say, the Butler Monkeys are having a concert downtown, and somebody's selling their T-shirts and CDs. Well, it's got to be it's got to be a public event. You can't charge admission to it. Just like we don't charge admission for folks to come to the farmers market. If they're having a block party or a concert downtown, they can't charge admission to the concert, but who says they can't sell T-shirts and CDs? I mean, I don't think that goes against the grain. I think it's if you're charging tickets to get into it. I think that's where.
I think you bring up exactly the question I was going to bring up, and that is the sale on the side of product. Would that be allowed?
Let's go over to Rod here.
I was going to address that. It's that a private business couldn't make any money at it. It would be incidental to the main purpose of the event. So yes, they would be able to have concessions. People will be able to sell things in there. And if you allow to have, alcohol in the Central District corridor, you can have a beer garden. And somebody's going to make some money off of that. But that's not the primary purpose of the closure. The closure is for a community benefit. And if other businesses come out and make it a bigger thing and they're selling things, I think that's, better for it.
Art?
Yeah, this is one for you again, Rod. Would you explore a little bit, sort of a compare and contrast between the advantages and disadvantages of release of liability versus obtaining insurance? I'm not quite clear on what the advantages and disadvantages of each to the city might be.
Well, if we require people to carry insurance, they're going to be if something happens, that's what people are going to look to cover any damages, cost of damages. If they don't require insurance and something happens, it's going to be the person who caused the injury or the damages that will be at fault and liable. Problem is, a lot of people don't have anything. If somebody gets hurt, they're going to go after anybody and everybody they can, and that would just mean that the city would be included, and we would have to defend and show that we really weren't the person who should be liable for that. The question why we brought that up is if we require to have insurance, they're going to have the insurance policy, and that's going to add to the cost, which will probably decrease the amount of people that are willing to do the block parties. So it's just whether policy, if we want to encourage the block parties and try to do it with, without having to raise the cost so much that a lot of people won't be able to afford to do that, or do you want to, take the risk and tell people that, they're
So
going to
how
be
much
responsible?
protection does the city get afforded through a release of liability?
None.
Well, it shows that they're going to be the person taking responsibility. They're the first one's going to be named on any lawsuit. But if they don't have anything, you can expect there's going to be whoever they can think that's going to be liable that they'll go after.
Gary?
Just to amplify that a little bit, there are different degrees of protection. What they put in this is the ultimate protection, and that is that $500,000 worth of insurance with the city being named as an additional insured, which means that we have first-party coverage. If they merely have their own insurance and we aren't named as an additional insured, then that doesn't mean the city's off the hook. They can still come after us for our own negligence and that sort of thing. If you get a release or a release with an indemnification, all that's saying is that the party that is being sued may release us from liability. That doesn't mean the person suing is going to release us from liability. The indemnification is the person who is getting sued. If we get sued as well, they indemnify us. They have to pay, if they have the means, any award against us. So there's different degrees of protection.
Mr. Mayor,
Walter?
probably Gary, I guess. If I wish to rent the city swimming pool next summer for a granddaughter's birthday party, I can do so. Is that correct?
My understanding, we have a program for that.
There's a program for that and a fee structure for it. Am I required to get insurance?
No, because
Or write a liability release?
no. I don't believe so.
If I throw the party and God forbid somebody drowns,
But
They have to have the
Lifeguards.
same amount of they have to follow the same rules we do. They have to have the same number of lifeguards and follow the rules that the public does. during
understood, but don't have to provide insurance.
No.
Okay. Just a comment about the block party thing, and we used to do block parties up on Ridgeview. We never got a permit. I told the chief of police we were going to do it, and he said, great, y'all have fun. It was a cul-de-sac, it was a dead-end street. We didn't barricade it, we didn't buy a permit. The city, at least the chief of police was aware of it. If you take this to a $40 permit and maybe $50 for signs, and then whether you do or don't go with insurance, that block party's going away. I just don't think people would be interested. That's not to say we shouldn't do what's proposed here, but I think it will have an impact on at least block parties. The larger events probably have the wherewithal, or it's a big enough event that they wish to provide the various things that we're asking for. If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Continue.
Les, quickly, what's changed here is, I think, two things, and if I've missed something, tell me. One, we're putting in writing a policy. Up to now and through now, we've had some idea of how to do this. The staff's had a method and a madness, pardon the madness part. But anyway, a way to work it and tried their best to apply it fairly. This now is putting it in writing. Secondly, it creates some fees that we do not have. There are fees for certain things that are in here. Other fees are not in the fee resolution. So,
Yes to the first statement, and the second, just a slight qualification is that this would indicate that we would be charging the fees, and then obviously within the fee schedule, we would create those that don't exist today.
so should the council...
Yes to both.
Should the council adopt this, then we would need to either modify the 2015 fee schedule if it's to become effective right away,
Yes,
or wait until the adoption of the 2016 fee schedule.
yes.
Okay, if I may.
Okay.
You've talked about the insurance, and I've talked about the block parties. Under construction, Les, does that apply to the city's construction?
The city typically does
Or
not.
or does it need to exclude the city's
Yeah,
construction?
the city typically does not issue itself permits for construction, and the reason for that is that it is the same personnel that generally are involved in monitoring and policing those activities that are performing the activities. And so the knowledge is there. We have a comfort level that we are doing things the way they're supposed to be done. We are very careful about making sure that is indeed the case. So it's a process that, because we do maintenance on the streets every day, that we do not go through that permitting process for the city's activities for construction, for maintenance.
If we do a remodel of the man building, does the city buy a building permit?
Yes.
Okay. Then if we do it there, if it's not excluded within this proposed policy, why wouldn't we do the following conditions which apply to street, alley, and sidewalk closures for construction and maintenance activities? I'm merely suggesting that possibly the city should be excluded in paragraph D under the construction closures, because if we're purchasing building permits for work we do on our own buildings, then under this, it would look to me like we ought to be doing all this as well. Just a thought. That's all I have for the moment, Mayor. Thank you.
Wayne?
Bring up a little bit of what Walter just said about, the question is why? What has changed? That all of a sudden we've identified this major need, that we needed more laws and we need more control. Has something bad happened, or do we anticipate something bad is going to happen, that we need to have better control?
We'll let Gary answer that. Gary, you want to?
Well, there are a couple things. What I think Public Works is trying to do is to get some certainty about what the rules are, number one, and to get a set policy from the council. What we're seeing is more and more requests to close Main Street. As John indicated, for 26, 28 weeks, it's closed every Saturday morning for farmers market, which now that it's moved to Main Street, and that was council decision to move it to Main Street, and I think clearly it was the right decision, it still takes Main Street away from the traveling public. So what may have been a reasonable number of closures in the past now just is exacerbated. So you get to the point where if the main reason for public right-of-way is to move people and you're closing it for these events, staff's feeling like we need some guidance as to know when we should and should not do that. For instance, last year, we had the Vandal Block Party, which was set up, Vandaltown Block Party, which was a welcoming back of the students, city-sponsored, but there were two other block parties, if you will, that were informal. They were held pursuant to street closures, but they had live bands and that sort of thing, and I think they were fairly well received. We worked with the applicants and got them so the noise wasn't an issue and those sorts of things, but still, it closed the public right-of-way down. And of course, the sidewalk cafes are doing their business. They're selling alcohol within the confines of their cafe. So we're just trying to find out what the parameters are and what the council is comfortable with.